the best and worst golf training aids of all time. Let's talk overpriced training aids. Let's talk cheap, great value feelings and swing thoughts that you can do with pretty much anything lying around the house. And then in the middle, some training aids that I actually think are fantastic and pretty much a must-have to have in your golf bag when you first start this game. So just like we've done in the past, let's get some epics out of the way. Let's get some more questionable, expensive training aids that, let's be honest, you could probably just use cheaper alternatives. Maybe not the same success, but in terms of value for money. And let's be honest, some of these training aids might need to be used once, twice to get a feeling, and then that's it. So spending 60, 70, 80 pounds on a training aid that essentially you're only going to use a couple of times, for me, in essence, just doesn't quite make sense. Number one, best value, most cheapest training aid here, the Align Me Up. You can get these in multitude different versions. You can get really expensive ones. When I say expensive, we're talking £50. You can get really cheap ones for £1, £2 plus postage. This here gives instant feedback for your putting. You can do this at home on the carpet. I used to do it tons when I was playing tournament golf, and all you're trying to do is just get a nice rhythm in your putting stroke to get that ball end over end. The club face might be open at the moment in your putting stroke. You might be coming across the ball. You might be coming into out, and the whole purpose of this is just find a way for you and your putter to get the ball going end over end. So it doesn't need to know what your putting technique looks like, but it's going to give you instant feedback at a very low cost. That same kind of line though, let's put this swing shirt at the bottom in the really section. I believe it retails upwards of $50 or £60, something like that. And yes, just like all of these training aids, there's a purpose. If you're a golf coach and you have a studio, there's an argument to have all of this in there, because you might have a client that hasn't quite got the feeling with their swing. Therefore you go, oh, let's get this out and try it, and click, it works. I'm not saying any of these training aids are bad. I'm just talking value for money versus how often an average golfer will really need this, and is that technique really important. This, I understand, connection in your golf swing, trying to keep the arms together rather than separate, but you could do the same kind of feeling and thought with a golf towel. I love a golf towel. You can put it on the ground in terms of pitching practice, and to get the same kind of effect as the golf swing shirt, just tuck it under both your arms. Try and keep that connection of your arms together against your chest, and your arms are relatively going to follow. I'm not saying it does everything the golf swing shirt does, but to get the same kind of feeling without having to spend more money, it makes sense that you at least try this drill with the towel first. And realistically, how many golfers need to spend hours and hours practicing this opposed to all the other parts of the golf game? Up next, this swing path finder. There's many of them. Again, all of these have different brands and different prices, you name it. I'm going to put this, in terms of the aid itself, in the okay section, because for me, when I've worked with clients in the past, you can kind of do this just with a head cover on the ground. Yes, this gives you a physical aid, so you've got a barrier to miss, but technically I've used these in the past. People are just a lot more intimidated when this is put on the ground because they don't necessarily want to hit it. Whereas a head cover, if you hit the head cover, it doesn't really matter. So for example, if you're having a slice issue, put it in between your feet and the ball so that you don't come across yourself, and you have to get that path going more in to out. Again, this has multiple features, but when it comes to a beginner golfer learning to swing the golf club, I don't think they need to spend 50, 60, 70 pounds on something like this, whereas there's just a much more simpler method. And as a golf coach, yes, there's argument to have it in the studio, but we're not all golf coaches, are we? Okay, let's get some good ones out the way in terms of good value for money. Smash bag, I like. Just like I said earlier in the previous drill, I like the idea of golfers just swinging freely and getting the ball in the way of the golf club. Too many golfers go to the golf club, they're trying to hit it out the middle constantly, and they're not necessarily thinking long term, gaining speed, getting that path on the inside, whatever it might be. Smash bag is great because you can just have effective practice, hands ahead of the golf ball, get that feeling of what impact should feel like without results. Very result orientated, the game of golf, and too many people get in the way of themselves when trying to practice this game because they're always looking for the perfect shot then and there, opposed to what they're trying to create or what they're trying to achieve in a month or so. And with that in mind, let's go with some quite expensive gear. This might be the most expensive bit of equipment that I actually rate quite highly, and again, I'm going to put it in the good section. Now, speed sticks I've used in the past, I've used it for long drive, I've used it with lessons, and just like going to the gym, they are borderline useless unless you're using it 3 times a week. Do they work? Yes. Have I used them to increase my club head speed? Yes. Are they expensive? £200? Yes. And there are cheaper alternatives to this as well. But the big thing for me is that if you want to increase your club head speed by 10 miles an hour, a lot of us would go and buy a £450 driver, so it's lighter and the faster ball speeds and whatever, whereas £200, I believe these were for 3, you can achieve that club head speed if you're regimented, if you stick to the program, if you do it 3 days a week. Big expense, but realistically in 2022, there's not many other aids I've seen or used that get your club head speed faster. Up next, we are going to go for a few interesting ones. We're going to go with like the explainer. That's what I remember it as, because I actually used it down here at Sanford Springs for quite a while, especially in my younger years as a golf coach. And it's a great piece to show the lesson, but in reality, I didn't see any differences with the lessons now I look back at it. And okay, it gets the kind of rhythm, but as soon as I stood up next to the golf ball, as soon as they stood up next to the golf ball, they kind of just fell back into their old flaws, where the backswing was going, over the top, or whatever it might be. I never actually saw a direct result, and there could be an argument if you have one of these at home and you used it every week, then yes, that's great. The issue I have with that, A, it's expensive. We're talking 4 figures for it, and you're going to outgrow it very quickly. Once you get used to getting your club on plane, which you can easily do without this, all of a sudden you kind of got this monstrosity in the back garden that's not necessarily going to give you anything else going forward, and therefore in terms of value for money and what you're trying to achieve, I don't think it's really that worthwhile. Opposed to one of these tempo trainers, which I have seen in the past, and to be perfectly honest, it's a similar kind of technique and thought process. You're trying to get rhythm, it's weighted, there's going to be some kind of flex in it, so you're creating that lag, and you can get these for around £30, £40, and as you can see with a lot of my good section, I like training aids that don't have results. You're just trying to get that kind of fluidity in your golf swing, and time again, I'm working with lessons, and I say to them, if you were to throw something to me 10 yards, 20 yards away, you're not thinking about the technique. You're not just going like that. You're not trying to keep everything stiff and still. You would rotate, you would turn, and then the ball would be the last thing, or the wrist would be the last thing to let go of the ball. All of these training aids are trying to recreate that in the golf swing. Try and move towards the target, turn towards out the target without having to think about each particular body part, because that's pretty much impossible. That's why I like these kind of training aids, especially the more value option, because that's just going to help you get that kind of rhythm and tempo. And not only that, I don't think you'd outgrow this one opposed to the explainer. This is kind of a good warm-up tool before you go and play 18 holes, and you could use that pretty much for the rest of your golfing career. Up next, let's look at some nets. I'm going to go for the cheap net at the bottom here that we all see on Amazon. £30, £40, put it up in your backyard and you're thinking, great, I can now practice at home. And that just isn't the case, because I've used them in the past. I'm going to put them down here. Now, if you can get a nice whole studio, or let's say a whole big net bolted into the ground mat, you've got space, you've got money, great. I like it. But then alternatively, just go to your golf course and do exactly the same. It gets boring quickly, and a lot of these, potentially good for a junior that isn't making massive divots, but a lot of these I've just put holes in after 20, 30 times, especially when I started the game. I went through loads of them, and a ball going out the back of one of these nets is not something you want, especially if you have another house behind your garden. Alternatively though, in terms of a net that I think is great, the chipping net. Affordable. Target location. You're thinking about that first bounce of your chip shot or pitch shot, and again, you don't need a massive garden to do this. You're not going to be tearing up the ground like you would with the other net, because you're taking full swings, and that kind of idea of bounce first and not necessarily worrying where it goes. Too many people, when they practice their chipping, are thinking the end goal. Where's it going to finish in terms of the ball? Whereas if you get very good with your 52, 56, your pitching wedge, and that 10-yard landing zone, I think this is one of the best drills you can have. It's cheap, it's affordable, it doesn't take up your whole garden. Putting mirror. These can be extortionate. This is one of the reasons why I kind of want to put them in the okay section, because it's just a mirror with lines on it. It is very good, and I have used them in the past, but some of these go for like 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds. It's a mirror on the floor, for goodness sake, with a couple of holes in it. And I want to put the T in the great section, because you can kind of do the same thing with this. Okay, you can't see your eye line, you can't see your shoulder line, for example, which I can understand is good for the mirror, and you can put tees down the mirror, but that all gate work I just did with this when I started the game. Get a couple of tees either side of your putter, and then a foot away, just put 2 tees the size of a ball, and just practice putting it through that gate work. That, for me, did wonders for my putting when I started the game. And you can spend 60-70 pounds on the mirror to do pretty much the same thing, but if you add this with the Align Me Up and you're getting it through the gate with a perfect roll, then you're pretty much going to be ticking all the boxes you can with a putting mirror, in my eyes. Speaking of putting, however, I am going to put this up here. I think it's a great fun aid. I've used tons of them in my assistant years when I was in the shop and I had 20 minutes to kill. You can have this in the office, you can have it at home. It's so simple. You could argue a lot of the put out products outside this are basically under this mirror example, where just because it's got the branding it's like 50% more, but I think the first initial product they brought out with a putt out is pretty much ingenious. Now, I haven't seen this training aid before, but I do think it's good, and again, it is kind of an example, just like I've seen with all other training aids. Essentially, professionals have found an easy way of teaching someone with a towel, a ball, tees, glove, whatever it is, and basically made a product that does the same thing, but you just apply it to a golf club, or you have the mirrors, whatever it is. But the problem with that is obviously there's margin and money, and there's just simple drills and techniques you can use otherwise. So I'm going to put the alignment stick. I think this aid here is about £40, which isn't bad considering this is what I see so much in so many golf swings, especially when it comes to chipping, wedge play, impact. There's a lot of things this does solve. So for £40, I think it's quite good. Essentially, that stick's going to stop you hitting your side, so it stops you doing this at impact and scooping and flipping the club. So I like it. However, the alignment sticks are golden. There's so many things you can do with alignment sticks. You can work on your swing plane, for example, with the alignment sticks. You can work on your alignment with the alignment sticks. You can stop this flipping by just holding one upside the golf club so then it points out. And again, it is tricky because then you have to hold that and the golf club as well. So I can see merit in this. I can see the design behind this. But I can guarantee you the person that came up with this just had alignment sticks. Put it against the golf club, and a lot of my lessons, especially when it comes to chipping and wedge play and pitching, get the same kind of feeling. And that's what we're after. Feeling equals confidence, and confidence equals good golf shots. Okay, we're going to move on to a nice little fun one here, T-claw. I'm going to put the T-claw in the good section. There's a lot of good ones in it. Not for many of you. Again, you can use alignment sticks rather than T-claw. Basically, they go into the ground. You can put a line between them so it helps with alignment and swing path. If you're a long driver, you need this. It's relatively expensive for what they are, £20, £25, I think, something like that. But if you're a long driver and you need to tee the ball up on the mat, or you hate using rubber tees at the driving range, this is what you need. Everyone that's played the game has seen this aid. And I would put it at the start of my career in the great section, but I'm going to put it in the okay section. The reason being, just like a lot of these training aids, I see training aids just like medicine. Medicine's great if you're treating the right illness. They're awful if you're not treating the right illness. And too many golfers I see start the game, buy one of these for £20, £30, whatever it is, and start working on getting that hinge, but then a neutral wrist position. And they can't, for whatever reason, realise why they keep hitting it massively right. They're working on their grip as well with this. And again, I'm going to put this in the okay section because they could be epic. Both of these could be in the epic section if your golf coach tells you to go and buy these. But too many times I see people with a massive slice start this game, they get this, and it gets worse, because they've neutralized their grip. That means they've opened the club face even more. And whereas they used to have a bowed wrist so that club face was slightly shut at the top, they've now made it neutral because they want their swing to look like Adam Scott. This one I found hilarious, and I'm sure there's tons of training aids like this one that is just over the top when it comes to golf. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're a top 100 golf coach and you have a studio and you can afford to spend 10 grand on all the training aids, I understand this. But if you're average Joe that plays off 25 and you see an advert for this and you're trying to get this connection in your backswing, well, let's be honest, you could just use a golf club like to get that extension, like extend your arms and then just stretch, which is a great stretch as well for golf. But this, again, just like this And this one here is just overcomplicating a decent standard basic drill that golf coaches have used for 30 odd years, but then are now retailing it at £200 plus. As you can see through my list, a lot of these drills, techniques and everything else can just be done with stuff around your house or already in your golf bag. Some of these do great in terms of feelings. When your coach or you know the problem in your golf swing needs fixed, some of these can be good, but it does come at a cost, and that's why I always like the cheaper options first to see if that does the trick. Okay, last but not least, the coin. Epic status. And to be honest, I could probably move the T-peg into epic status. £2, you already have one at home, you have 300 of them already in your golf bag. There's so many drills, and I highly suggest you go into YouTube and look at putting drills, chipping drills, iron drills with coins, tees in your glove. There's so many good drills out there with stuff you already have in your golf bag, and it gives you the feeling, it gives you the technique. The coin, you can stick it to either side of your face with blue tack, so you have a small feedback spot on your putter. You can put it on the ground in terms of chipping, so it gives you feedback, so you're not hitting the coin, but you're hitting the ball first. There's tons of them out there. Not only that, you've got tons of coins in your bags, because let's be honest, we all use this as a ball marker anyway. So I have to finish off the epic section with the coin and maybe a promotion for the T-peg. Now guys, if you like this tier list, you probably like my driver all-time tier list. There's some absolute beauties in there that are actually quite old now, but great value for your bag and potentially going to give you all that advancement and technology that we have in 2022, but not necessarily with the same kind of price tag. So go and check this video up here on the left hand side. Catch you guys there.